Today I want to share with you an awesome chainsaw sharpening hack. A lot of us like to sharpen our chainsaws in a fairly controlled environment because it's such a precise action, and getting it wrong just results in a ton of frustration. Sometimes you're working out in the field and you dull a chain, or maybe you dull all of your chains, several chains, and you have no choice but to sharpen in the field. Okay, so maybe you've got a tool or something like that that you can use to prop the bar up and help you with that. But the reality is a lot of times you're sharpening in this kind of environment, down on the ground, a lot of times on the steep hillside, and it can be a particularly difficult task. I find sharpening in this orientation to be particularly annoying because I always feel like I can't get down and see the bar really well to make sure I've got a good alignment on the teeth. And then of course, one or the other orientation is always super awkward. I always feel like it just feels like two left hands, and I'm not getting a very good sharpening. Of course, if you can deal with all the other problems like the saw not trying to wiggle around and fall off the log and break your saw, there are tools out there, that can be used to attach to the bar and keep those long bars up while you work on sharpening and stuff. But of course, I always leave that in the vehicle because I think that's where I'm going to need it. And a lot of times I'm pretty far from the vehicle, and it's usually really far uphill, so I don't really want to go get it, especially if maybe I just knock a couple teeth and I just want to do a little bit of sharpening and get back to work. So the first thing we want to do is find a tree that's the right size. And what we're looking for is just small, probably as big as your hands when you put your fingers together and make a circle. So we're going to lop this guy down to start, and then I'll show you this trick. All right, so what I've got is a straight down cut here, and then I've worked backwards to create a V and left these two little feet here like a vise. And then I've created this small back cut that gives us a place to drive a wedge. If you're enjoying this video, please take a moment and hit that like button, and also share it with somebody who loves tool hacks like this one. And there you have it, a vise that you can work on your chain anywhere in the forest. Now you can move your chain freely, and you can get at eye level. You can get around to both sides without having to move the saw, and this setup makes sharpening in the field super easy. Getting the size of the tree and the depth of the cut and the back cut and everything correct takes some practice, especially if you're working with different size and weight of saws. So be prepared to put a little bit of time into this. It does take a little bit of practice, but once you kind of get an eye and a feel for it, it actually happens pretty fast. You should be able to get a saw set up and ready to sharpen in probably 60 seconds or less. Of course, to use this method, you're going to have to be carrying some felling wedges and an axe with you, or something that you can pound with. In a desperation mode, you could use a rock. Either way, you're going to have a wedge to make this system work. I don't really know of a better way other than to use a wedge, but maybe if you do, leave it in the comments and we can all learn from it. Don't get me wrong, I'm one who loves tools, just like you guys probably do. But what I really love is the ability to just use what's around me and get done what I need to get done so that I can get back to work easily. And this hack to me is one of those things. You don't need anything special. You've already got the saw. You're probably already in the woods, and wow, just like that, you're set up and ready to give it a tune-up. This process I've used with my small electric chainsaw when I'm out just kind of pruning and nipping. I feel like that chain actually needs more sharpening because it's so small. It's a 1/4 pico chain, and for whatever reason it just doesn't hold that sharp for very long. And instead of carrying 10 chains with me, I can just lop a tree really quick, which I'm already doing, give it a quick tune-up and keep working. I suppose you could do this with a pole saw also if you were doing some high up trimming and maybe you knock it down on the ground or something like that. Or those little tiny saws just seem to need more sharpening because they have so little chain. And so this process works super good on those little tiny saws too. You guys probably caught on, I'm working on a pretty steep hillside right now, and if there's a place that's frustrating to sharpen a chainsaw, it's on a steep hillside. It always feels like there's a lot of rocks and trees and things all around you, and the saw wants to fall down the hillside and break into a million pieces. This system is really nice to have when you're working in this environment because it's stable, it's level, and it's easy to work on. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you give this a try next time you're working out in the woods.
I forgot to mention in this video that you can do this with a chainsaw with a super long bar. I have a 660 steel that's got a 36-inch bar on it, and what you're looking for is basically two similar sized trees that are fairly close together, and as long as your bar will reach between both trees, you can basically replicate this exact same system and just create two clamps. As long as your bar reaches between the two trees, it should hold just fine, and this system works amazing. I have a couple of tips about this process I wanted to share also. So first, I want to talk about the clamp itself. What you want to make sure of is that the shoe, this part here, is actually smaller than the size of your bar. You just want to make sure that when you clamp the bar that you have room for the chain to move freely. So you want to back cut a little bit and make sure that it's small. You don't want to be too small because then it won't grip the bar, and then the saw will tend to kind of slip and fall. You'll kind of figure that process out. And then the other thing is the back cut. You want that back cut to be just below where you cut the straight down V cut. And that way the wedge has a lot of clamping force. If you make it too far down, it won't have much clamping force at all. And if you make it too high, it'll just kind of ruin the whole thing. So don't feel bad if it takes you a couple of tries to get this figured out. Once you get it dialed in, it works amazing.